So, first question, what seasons of ministry personally have you found hardest? And what are some of your personal temptations that kind of pushes you to, like, sinful ways that you might want to respond? So, seasons of ministry you find hardest, and some of the wrong ways you're tempted to respond in the midst of it.
I don't know if this is what everyone struggles with. I struggle with a couple of things. One is you can't see measurable effects to your ministry sometimes. It's not tangible. You're not like a builder where you have architect plans, you have nothing in front of you, and then in 6 months' time or a year or however long it takes, you can finish the job and say, I've done this job. Ministry is not, you don't have the tangible results, and that can be difficult week to week, particularly when you're having a difficult week and you're just like, I'm preaching the same thing every week, I'm counseling people, I'm praying for them, and they don't seem to be listening, or they turn it back on me for some reason, and nothing's happening. I can't be bothered with this anymore. And then my tendency would be, I want to run away, or I just feel sorry for myself, which can both be sinful tendencies for me. I think that's difficult. And then I think just the responsibility as a pastor to care for people's souls. So you obviously, Paul talks about being anxious for the churches, and you feel that weight when you go to sleep, as you have elders meetings, as you meet people, as people text you and say, can I speak to you? Your heart always drops into your stomach, thinking what's the next thing that's going to be said to you? And then you're thinking, well, how am I going to respond to this situation as well? You're constantly thinking, it's constantly a burden. It wears you down over time and can be difficult. So they'd be the things that I would struggle with personally.
Yeah, I think I'd say the same. I think when, there's never one thing that goes wrong, there's always 20. Mm-hmm. And then there's another 20 things that you know are going to go wrong next month because 20 things have gone wrong this month. Yeah, it's just constant. It's just always, you're always on the go. There's always something. Your mind's always in overdrive, and that means it's really hard to be present when you're at home, really hard to be present when you're with friends, when you're doing stuff, when people are sharing with you. You've got to work really hard to think, I'm here now, I'm not there, I'm not where I'm going to go, I'm not where I've been, but I'm right here. Which means even that's tiring, so you end up being grumpy around the house and all this kind of stuff. But I'd say probably the same as Andy actually, and I just don't, when I'm not doing well, I just don't want to be around people. And that's quite a big part of the job. So when my sermons are really well planned, it's when I'm not doing well, because I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to study. I need to. So when Sundays are chaos, I'm in a good place. Yeah.
I think in hard seasons, I would be inward, to turn inward, I think, and to just or be defensive if people are not being attacked, but think wrongly of you or think badly of you or your husband, then you just kind of hunker down and get defensive, I guess, and then forget that it's not about you. And I think the temptation is to just make it about yourself and try and defend yourself, and it's a war, but it's not, we don't have to defend ourselves. God doesn't have us defend him either, as he defends himself. So it's to realign yourself with what's really going on and why we're really here.
I think along those same lines, it's easy to turn my focus in on my family and to see my kids struggling, and it all becomes about them, and actually turning that into an idol and their well-being into an idol, when actually the ways I could stand here and name all the ways God has cared for us and shown kindness to our kids outweighs all of everything else.
Who are some of the people, maybe again personally in your lives, that have helped you kind of endure some of these seasons, and what is it you've found particularly helpful from some of these people?
Great. I was just thinking, just to answer your second question by re-answering your first question, I don't think it's a season. I think it's because there's seasons where ministry was really, really hard, but we were fine. And I think it's seasons when you take your eyes off of Christ and the joy and the honour it is to do this. And you forget that you do this because you are saved, and he saves. I think it's the seasons where you forget that, or there's enough distraction going on that isn't the first thing you think about when you wake up, but the problems are the first things you think about. And so the people who are really helpful for me, I say, oh, it's just, you just have to sit next to them and listen. That's not very helpful. Well, it's not for me anyway. It's people who do just constantly remind you of that you are a sinner, and that just taking breath is a gracious gift of God, And being able to sit down with someone and literally see them, well, not literally, but see them going from spiritually dead to spiritually alive we shouldn't even have the privilege of seeing that, let alone being part of it. So people who just remind you of who Christ is and what he's called you to do are just absolute gold dust.
Yeah, I think just friends, really helpful, just people who will take the time to listen to you, but also people you can just talk to, not about ministry. Go out and get a drink with someone, talk about the football, talk about the box sets you're watching, because what can happen is you're in a goldfish bowl. Your friendships, your ministry, your church, your life is all in one community, in one building, and that can be very difficult, and you think your whole world is that little world. But actually sometimes you need to get out of that world and say, actually there's a big world out there. You're not the only one struggling. There's other people battling away, and there's encouragements as well. And so that's helpful for me. And just two people. Well, my wife's always great at encouraging me. We try and have coffee once a week just to talk about how we're doing, and that's always encouraging. And then Mez has also been a great source of friendship over the years. I'm going through a difficult time, just ring him up, he just listens, he says, love you, got your back. No advice, no biblical mantras, just those two things, and they're just enough sometimes just to be like, yeah, I can keep on going. So that's helpful for me.
Yeah, but else, guys, your life people that are particularly helpful?
Your wife, actually. No, Lindsay has been
awesome.
really helpful. She's quite awesome. She has a great name too. Has been really helpful just being that person inside to help me like navigate school and navigate, all of these questions about life and culture here that like I know that I can go to her, and she's been tremendous help, and also even like in the first year or two, Miriam would always check in with me and call and pray with me and ask how the kids are doing, and that was always really helpful as well.
Yeah, just the same friendships, and even like people who are outside of 20 schemes as well is helpful to have friends outside of. We've met people obviously in our trips to America that have remained friends, and they've been good to just keep in contact with, who aren't necessarily right in it, but just knowing that people are praying for you is great.
Question for Scott. What are some intentional things someone from outside the Scottish culture could do to better bridge the cultural gap? Which is a fair question, although I do think in some ways it's on us as Scottish people more to help people do that, because we're used to Daddy's like, nah. So let me also ask Lindsay after that, what are some ways that we as Scottish or British, depending on your political affiliation, could do to help people come in from the outside? So, yeah, guys, what do you think first? Scottish folk, English folk? What is that people come from the outside could do better to bridge the cultural gap?
I don't think we've always done it that well. I think a couple of things. I think, again, being that person to walk beside families who are coming over, being intentional, speaking to them, being a listening ear, helping to work through things on the ground. I think that's really helpful. Being patient can be hard sometimes when someone's not getting something and you're just like, just get it. And so just being patient with people, I think, over the long haul. Americans coming over, the ones that have done well, like the Davis family, the Nelsons and other families, is have come with humility to learn. The Americans who come over thinking that they know everything and are not here to learn, don't do well, and they go home pretty quickly. And so it's really important that the missionaries that come over come with that culture of, I'm going to learn the culture, I'm going to adapt to the culture, even though it's painful. And I'm coming in that mindset rather than I'm coming to receive something from the church, because ultimately they're coming to support and strengthen the church, and we don't have a lot of time to invest in them, and they're not there for that. They're here to help us plant churches and disciple people and get alongside and strengthen what's already there. And so it's important that anyone's coming, if you're a candidate coming over here, come over with a posture of humility, and you'll learn and you'll grow. Come in with a posture of pride, you'll drain the church and you'll go home pretty quickly and we'll be annoyed at you. And no one will be helped.
But that won't be pride on our behalf, we'll be right. So that's like one, humility. Like if we all understand that we don't have all the answers. That'll help out all of us. And patience, as you say as well. Like it will take time to come in from a different context, and if you expect everything to go great and everything to be perfect straight away, that's going to go set yourself up for failure. And then the whole idea of teachability. Like if you come in thinking you know the answers, if we go to America thinking we know all the answers, then that will go badly too. And so those things together, this is what's awesome about the church, right? It's almost like God knew what he was doing. But in the local church, we're meant to have young and old, rich and poor, American, Scots, African, all of that, and it's living the gospel out alongside each other that will help. Lindsay, how can we help you guys better, do you think?
I think the burden primarily is on us. This is the culture we're coming into, and we need to learn it. But we don't always know what we don't know, and some things we learn about this culture by actually going back and learning about our own. And I think one thing that's really helpful is when you guys ask us about our home and our culture. Like, I don't expect most people to care about our life in America, but it is part of who we are, and that's part of how you know us, and we can learn to relate back when we can identify those differences together, I think.
Mike just messaged me and said, please say hot tubs, please say hot tubs. I think he thinks having a hot tub would help. So, Lewis says, Americans just need to marry Scots. That's how to learn the culture properly.
That's where they'll be sanctified.
So anybody is single and Scottish, do you want to stand? No, we're not doing that. So you guys are also both ministry wives, and so I thought it'd be helpful to take the opportunity, like, particularly as a ministry pastor's wife, church planter's wife, are there struggles that role brings that maybe the wider church don't know or see as much that would be helpful to kind of chat through?
An unhelpful expectation that goes with being a minister's, what are we? Ministry wives, yeah. That you don't struggle with things, or that you don't get peopled out, or that you have sin. Like, I think all of these things, like, maybe, I don't like that they're there, but they're there, and that's who I am. And I'm on a journey like everyone else as a sinner, trying to turn my eyes to Christ daily. So it's just, that's a women's worker as well as ministry wife, but if that was any clue.
I think just watching the burden that your husband carries is hard. And knowing that there's a whole lot that he's trying to juggle and deal with that most people in the church have no idea. And so light comments of criticism that they don't know how those affect him and affect me.
I appreciate that. And then the final just little question here is about mental health, depression. I know some of you guys again have wrestled through that. So someone's asking, how could we help others, or I guess how are we ourselves helped in seasons of depression or when our mental health is a struggle?
Yes, I've struggled with depression my whole life, and there was one thing that Brian Croft spoke about at one of his conferences that I went to in Edinburgh, and that I realised there were two people in our church that were already doing it, but I hadn't realised until he'd mentioned it. And he talked about during a particularly difficult period of conflict in one of his churches, he had a friend who, as soon as he'd finished preaching, would come and talk to him, and basically he'd escort him back to his office, and then talk to him in his office for 5 minutes, and then stand by the door to almost, divert. People would behave better when there's someone else there. There's definitely two people in my church that just do that. Not because people are angry at me all the time.
Not all the time.
Not all the time, no. But once Emma Louise has calmed down, then no, but genuinely, and it is because like depression's quite an easy thing to hide, but it consumes a lot of your it just changes the way you think and how you think and the way you perceive other people's impressions of you and the way you perceive how you are performing. So people might be sitting there going, oh yeah, that's not right sermon, that was fine, but you'll be in there thinking, that was awful, I should never be allowed up here ever again. And so protecting somebody from that is very, I find that really helpful. Basically the guy just comes and chats to me, And then, well, I don't have an office anymore, but when I had one, would say, oh, let's chat in the office and go in there. But yeah, I just think being a steady presence in someone's life is really helpful, and not kind of expecting them to perform or say the right thing or to be super holy all the time, but just to get alongside people and walk with them and don't try and understand it from their perspective if you've never suffered from depression, but just be there, basically.
Loving Heavenly Father, thank you for the fact that you are faithful to us in every season of life, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Thank you that you sustain us with your wonderful mercy and grace. And I just pray, Lord, whatever we're going through in our lives at the moment, that we would keep looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Help us to get all the help we need from the means of grace you've given us, your word, prayer, friendship, church, and to invest in those things so that we might continue to endure and continue to grow as believers. I pray again that you might send your Spirit, Lord. Fill us, Lord, this afternoon. Encourage our souls so that we do not give up or lose heart. In Jesus' name, amen.